artificial intelligence, and especially these different models, they're kind of like discovering a new species. And I don't mean this in sort of the anthropic way of like we're sort of creating God kind of thing.
Right.
I mean this in the biologist way, when like you've encountered a species you've never seen before.
Welcome to The Art of Quality, the podcast seeking wisdom in business, investing, systems, and the art of paying attention. Each episode uncovers stories from practitioners pursuing wisdom and excellence in their craft. We are seeking to understand how the world really works and how we can align our actions to it. I am your host, John Candeto, and in this episode, I sit down with Andrew Farah, the founder and CEO of Density. Andrew and his team are at the forefront of using AI to improve how we build and create. We discuss how using AI is like encountering a new species, why this is the best time in history to be a creative person, why the future will be owned by people who build tools, and how AI can amplify human ambition. Please enjoy our conversation. We're in the offices of Andrew's firm, Density. We've been building things together this week, and there's something about just the energy. There's high-fiving, you hear it, you feel. I think it'd be hard to walk in here and not just feel like exciting things are happening. So say more about that. I mean, I get the sense that there's sort of a crescendo we're living in a way, but say more about that.
Sure. Well, first off, I think you're here because you decided to kind of like take a leap.
Yeah.
Which I think not a lot of humans do. And so maybe the context on you being here is relevant. We had been talking about this program that we run internally called the apprenticeship, which is essentially a way to, people use the term like to AI pill people, but I think a much better or more practical way of describing that is like, how do you build an intuition for what frontier models are capable of and what frontier models are not capable of?
Yeah.
And if you have that intuition, the only way to build that intuition is to make stuff with those models.
Yes.
Because you start to get a real feel for the quality of the artifacts that come out the other end. And you quickly learn that it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, which is, always been true. Less garbage comes out these days with LLMs as a result of sort of general intelligence. But once you start to figure that out, you can start to figure out like where you apply it to work. And so I've been describing this program called the apprenticeship that we run internally at Density, where for both in-person team members and also for distributed team members, we have them essentially either like sit at the desks of a small sort of agentic engineering team, like they sit next to us, or fly to San Francisco for 2 weeks and sit at those desks with this sort of like agentic engineering team. And we ask them to bring 3 things. They have to bring their normal day-to-day work, like the stuff that they're responsible for. They have to bring a big project, like a project that they thought would take like 3 to 6 months, but ideally something that they've always wished our engineering team would have gotten to, but never did. And they got to bring a hobby, like a personal project, something that they can work on effortlessly because it's about ice cream, or it's something for their kids, or it's a passion project that they can work on the weekends. And if they bring those 3 things, our goal in the first day is for the person to have achieved the big, hairy project in the first day.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen in the first day. Sometimes it happens in like the 3rd day or the 2nd week. But when that person sort of experiences that, like, it's sort of like crossing the Rubicon. Once you get past the point of like, oh my God, the thing I thought I was going to labor over for a long period of time actually has this massive time compression. We can now do so much more. And what really ends up happening is that's the starting gun for building an intuition about what these frontier models are capable of. And we were talking about this, and you were like, can I do it?
Yeah.
And I was like, are you kidding me? Of course you can do it. And so you flew out here from Florida And it was, we're doing 3 days instead of 2 weeks. But I think at least getting a sense of like the types of things that we do.
Yes.
I think that model of like an in-person, bring real work. The hobby project is important because we want you to work on it in the evenings.
Yep.
Not because we told you to, but because you just love it.
Yeah. That was last evening for me.
That's great. That's great. So I guess maybe my question for you is like, did any of it work? What's sort of like the scorecard on like getting to have experienced some of this? And then obviously happy to talk about the program and what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. So can I step back a second to answer that?
Sure.
Because you planted a bug in my brain that I don't know if you meant to at the time, but maybe 2-3 months ago we were talking over the phone and you told me this beautiful story about you riding your bike and having a conversation with your phone that was getting ported to some of these tools. And as you were riding your bike and talking, things were being built for you. And can you tell us that story?
Yeah. I ride my bike to work each day. And I live in sort of the Oakland Hills, and there's like a solid 20-minute ride to the sort of BART station that I take into San Francisco. My office is in San Francisco. And so this particular day had been a very productive day. We had like shipped a bunch of stuff. I had built a bunch of stuff. And, I've been running Density for 12 years. And the job of the CEO and founder, it changes a lot over the arc of a startup. The reason you get into making a startup is typically because you want to build something, that you want to see exist in the world. Ideally for yourself. It's a very selfish act to be like, I wish this thing existed. But as like time passes and as complexity increases and as you start to have customers and team members, it's very easy to get pulled away from what it looks like to do like day-to-day building. And the amount of time you have to do that sort of shrinks pretty materially. So for the last 2 years, I've been doing a lot of work, maybe 3 years, been doing a lot of work with whatever frontier model was available to build stuff. And 3 months ago, it just happened to be a day that was particularly productive. I shipped like a ton of stuff. I think I had something like maybe 12 PRs into various things that we were working on together. And I was riding home and I was sort of listening to music. I wasn't talking to my computer. Also, I didn't have my computer like cooking in the background. I wasn't quite at that stage yet, but I was listening to music and I was sort of thinking and reflecting on the day. And I was overcome with emotion. I just sort of like broke down crying, and I had to pull over and sort of collect myself. It was very sudden and unexpected. It's 8:00 at night. It's pitch dark. I'm riding through the woods and I keep going. Maybe another 10 minutes passes and all of a sudden I just like break down crying again and I have to pull over, collect myself, and finally get home. And I get upstairs and I'm catching up with my wife. It was amazing. And arguably, the reason I'm still in startup is because of my amazing wife. And she's like, how was your day? And I started to describe my day, which was a particularly good one. And I just break down crying again. And she's like, oh my God, what's wrong? And I was like, I feel like I can breathe. I feel like I have found a way to express what is in me all the time, every day, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep, and couldn't express myself. It was like finding your voice. And it is actually not one of the reasons. It's not the only reason. It is actually one of like hundreds of reasons, hundreds of examples over the last, call it 18 months in particular, that I believe that artificial intelligence and the use of sort of agents will actually meaningfully increase what it means to be human for us, as opposed to do the opposite. I think that we are going to discover much more of our humanity, much more of who we are. And I say that because I have witnessed it in my own team members. I have people who call me after having gone through the apprenticeship program, and they're just like, I don't think my life is going to be the same. We have a young junior accountant who is now a senior accountant, and I don't think she's going to be an accountant in 5 years. And it's not because she can't. I think she will be running an accounting firm. I think that she will be building something maybe completely orthogonal to accounting. And it's because I got to watch her. It's not because of me. We got to watch her. Our team got to watch her become and demonstrate, express parts of herself in work that no one knew, including her, that she had in her. And that is, I literally can't think of a more beautiful thing. We have all this talk about it, artificial intelligence and all this fear mongering around jobs. And I'm deeply convinced that the alternative is too. It is true. I also believe that there will be tumult and that there will be a lot of creative destruction. But what happens when you give the ability to paint to someone who has a lot of beautiful images in their head and doesn't know how to paint? What happens when you give someone who can think in film but doesn't know how to produce a film the ability to make a film? What happens when you give extraordinary tools, engineering tools, to people that are very capable at describing the outcome they'd like, but don't yet have the skill set or requisite skills to be able to build those things? And I think what we're going to see is a Cambrian explosion of new things that have never existed before, but have been locked in the ambitions of humans all over the world.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing. So how I connect into that is you told me that story, and it's hard not to hear that. And for anyone who has ideas in their head, things they want to paint conceptually or literally, I think it's hard not to hear that and say, I want to get closer to that. And so we ended that phone call. I thought, man, that's an incredible story. And I just kept thinking about it. And I haven't quite had the riding the bicycle, overcome with emotion moment yet, but I can almost feel it approaching in a way. So I've been working on my own AI powered robots to help with the investment practice that I run. And I told somebody a few weeks ago, I said, for the first time in 20 years, I can analyze a business the way I always wanted to analyze it. And there were two pieces to that. One was there've always been 100 questions I wanted to ask and answer. And it just took too much time and effort to answer all of them. So you had to pick a few, but not all. So we can answer more questions. But then also too, because a lot of those questions were technical in nature, you could spend a lot of time on the numbers, but then you have less time for the intuitive side and the human side. And so the fact that we can compress a lot of explicit reasoning into robots frees up a lot of time for the intuitive and the imaginative and the implicit reasoning that is also part of the investment craft and many other things. So that was exciting to me. So then we're talking 2 weeks ago and you say, hey, we got this apprenticeship. And as I remember it, I said, great, I got to do that. I hung up the phone, I looked at the calendar, and I realized this week was sort of the only time in the next few months that I could make it work. I think I called you right back and was like, hey, can we just, let's go.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Yeah.
And so to answer your questions, I told my wife this morning, this is the highest and best use of time I can think of for this sort of moment in time. In my calendar that I look at every day, there's a reminder at the very top, which asks the question, what's the best use of time today? And I bummed that off of Ben Franklin, whose paper journal said at the beginning of each day, it said, what good shall I do today? And at the end of each day, it said, what good did I do today? Just to kind of keep him focused. And so when we're in a time of immense Cambrian explosion of creativity, as you call it, one of my friends would say we're entering a bull market in the humanities. When we're in that time, I don't think the logical reaction to that is, let's just have a little bit of it when I get time. I think this is one of those moments where if you can, it's worth rerouting significant time to figure out what it means for you, what it means for how you do things versus how you could do things, for what you thought you couldn't create that you can now create. And so that whole process has been great, and coming here and sitting with you and the team and building. So I would say now, of the many ways that I want to analyze a business that weren't possible that now are, that concept and capability has just expanded and expanded and expanded. And I can feel myself mentally, and including in some of what we're building, going places that I think I never would have thought to go.
Yeah. There's a few things that I think are like really important inputs to the outcome of having an intuition for what these models can do. And we used to talk about this a lot before we ran the apprenticeship program, which was you just simply need time with model. There isn't a shortcut. You just need to spend time with a model. And it's true with every new model, actually. So you get sort of everyone has to start over when the next model drops. They come with a lot of like stuff with them. They bring a lot of stuff if they've spent a lot of time before. But artificial intelligence, and especially these different models, they're kind of like discovering a new species. And I don't mean this in the sort of the anthropic way of like we're sort of creating God kind of thing.
Right.
I mean this in the like biologist way, when like you've encountered a species you've never seen before, and all of you and your colleagues are inspecting and studying it and marveling at all of the extraordinary things it can do. A tardigrade is a wonderful analogy for this. You discover a tardigrade and you're like, wow, what happens if we put it in space?
Yeah.
And you realize it's still alive. Then you're like, okay, can survive in vacuum.
Right.
Then someone else goes, hey, I took my tardigrades and I shot them out of a cannon and they're still alive, which happened. I saw this last week.
Can you, for those who don't know what a tardigrade is, can you just explain what it is?
Yeah, it's like a microbial like creature. It looks like it's called a water bear.
Yep.
They are indestructible creatures. They can literally survive the vacuum of space.
Yeah.
They're very small.
They can be shot out of cannons.
Cannons. They're perfectly fine. These things are like the cockroaches of the universe.
Yeah.
But we have them. They're all over the place. I actually don't know in what volumes or where specifically, but you should look them up if you don't know what they are. Look up water bear or tardigrade. There's actually a very funny thing, I think, in like English. What is the English Doctor Who?
Yeah.
They find like a giant tardigrade.
Yeah.
And, anyway, primary point is a bunch of biologists are looking at this species or this thing, and they're trying to understand its constraints. They're trying to understand its capabilities, and they run a bunch of experiments, and they marvel at what it can do or what it can't. That is what working with a model should feel like, is that you are just doing things with it, and you're asking yourself, well, I wonder if it could. And then the more that you do that, you start to realize, oh, I know it can. And then it might not even be tied to some work that you're doing. It might be tied to a hobby that you worked on. But now that you've unlocked the permission to ask it to do a thing that you didn't realize, and I'll give you a practical example. I should also say, I think there are a lot of people that are talking about AI in non-practical ways. Yeah. And I think the practicum, the practice of using models is super important. You should not be, don't read about a model, talk to the model.
Yes.
Ask the model to do something. Give it the ability to modify or interact with your computer, and then just watch it fly and assume essentially that 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 out of 100, it can do the thing that you're asking. It might not do it in quite the way, but that it can do the thing. So I'll give you a practical example. My sister-in-law works in health insurance. She is spectacular at helping people navigate health insurance. The tools required to determine if something is insured or covered by a plan, any plan, as you're choosing insurance, are arcane. They are super slow. They often conflict with one another, but the formularies are all there. All the data is public for the most part. You can look this up on the internet. You can go, and the reality is that the tools are terrible even with modern systems. So I built a system that specifically solves the hour of prep required to do a good and high quality call with someone who's just asking if their prescription, their doctor, and their hospital or location is covered by their insurance that they're considering.
Right.
It does it in 4 or 5 seconds instead of an hour.
Right.
It does it across as many prescriptions as you want to put in, as many doctors as you want to put in. It does it as many locations. It instantly tells you, is it tier 1, tier 2? Is it covered? Is it not covered? Under like which prescriptions? I mean, it's like a really pretty basic tool, but it's a tool that it has enormous value for someone that knows the industry really well.
Yeah.
I built an automation. I realized that Codex, which is my preferred tool, GPT-5.5 extra high is the best model in the world for building stuff. It's better than Opus 4.8 by a pretty wide margin for reasons we can get into. I built an automation. So we built this thing together, me and my sister-in-law. She is as much an author as I am. And I told her, hey, if you run into any issues or bugs where it's wrong, just send me an email and I'll make sure to work on it and get it up.
Yep.
And I built a little automation, which by automation, I mean 3 to 5 sentences that you tell Codex and a schedule. Run at 9 a.m. in the morning. Please go to my email, find any emails that have come from my sister-in-law, read the email she's sent that might describe a problem in the project, which is called summer.computer. Fix the issue, merge it into main, which is just where the code is stored on GitHub. And then when that happens, GitHub automatically deploys it to the website.
Mm-hmm.
And so she is technically controlling my computer without realizing it. She's
right.
sending me an email.
Right.
My computer is fixing a problem,
right.
pushing it up to, now there's all sorts of security issues with this, but I would say in general,
but the concept,
you learn something just by trying to make something.
Right.
And now, I mean, you were here for today. All of today was a discussion about automations.
Right.
Loop design, goals. Essentially,
Yes.
automations are like goals with a loop.
Yes.
And so that's unlearnable in a conceptual sense. You just need to do the thing.
Right. Yes. Yes. So let's get into, you said something to me earlier today on loops, that all of your time with AI should go to improving loops or improving the data that's used or the context that's used in the loops.
Yeah. So I want to separate this a little bit. So first off, I think there are two activities when you're making something with a model.
Mm-hmm.
One is setting a goal and allowing the model to just go after that goal for a while.
Mm-hmm.
The second is editing down the artifact that it creates.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is a hands-off, it's a set it and forget it process.
Mm-hmm.
The second is a hands-on process. It's very hands-on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that barbell strategy is the way that you should be interacting with models.
Yeah.
So it's not so much, I think on like the loop design is an interesting new sort of like meta right now. It's like an interesting new way of thinking about what's really important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important to understand these first two concepts first before you get into like how to do a really high quality loop. The hands-off process is essentially three things. It's 3 to 5 sentences that describe the objective or the goal or the outcome, ideally with something that's verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
Numbers are great. Get the latency below 100 milliseconds,
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to review all 50,000 public equities.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a verifiable thing. The computer can know. So that's a good goal, is a verifiable goal. 3 to 5 sentences on what you're trying to achieve. Then you can think of like a second circle where you're going to dump a bunch of context.
Mm-hmm.
Information that you have, a Google Drive folder, a voice transcription about some additional context that you think is important.
Mm-hmm.
And then what's going to happen is you're going to say go. And that goal is going to cook for anywhere from 5 minutes to 24 hours. And it's just going to run against, did I get this goal? Did I achieve this goal? Did I achieve this goal? And it's going to keep doing that until it does. Elite level goal writing right now is 50 to 100 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's like,
as in you set the goal and the machine will go off for 50 to 100 hours until it achieves the goal.
Without you needing to intervene.
Right. Right.
There are some longer ones, but I would say the people that I know who are best at this are at the multi-day, legitimately multi-day. They're legitimately working on hard problems.
Right.
And it's about anywhere between 50 and 100 hours.
Yeah.
Beginner level, like you've done pretty well on setting the goals, about 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would say like pro level is about, you could do it overnight, 8 to 12 hours.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's the goal side. That's the hands-off side. It's going to produce an artifact at the end of that 8 hours, at the end of that 30 minutes.
Right.
That artifact is going to be necessarily imperfect. And your job, once you get that artifact as a human, is to edit it down. You use the thing, you look at the thing, you point at the thing, you describe the thing, and you make it better. And you go from 100%, whatever the artifact is, down to 80%.
Mm-hmm.
And then that becomes context for your next goal.
Right. Right. So
and
this is a living version of, I've said for years, success is iterative. So iterate. So there's a living version of that.
That's right.
Define a goal, create a thing, edit, repeat.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that brings us to like loops.
Yep.
And a loop is just a goal on a timer.
Mm.
And loop design, similar to goal design, the higher quality the loop design, the higher quality the artifact, the more perfect the artifact.
Mm-hmm.
Your example, I think, is a very good one. Can I talk about
please,
your example?
Please. Yeah.
You want to analyze, it's a pretty ambitious one. You want to know the state of all 50,000 equities that are available in U.S. markets?
Global
markets. We don't have 50,000 companies.
Yeah.
Okay, global markets. And you want a model to know the state change of all 50,000 equities. And then each day to have a short list of anywhere from 0 to maybe 10 maybe as many as 15 specific tickers that you should pay attention to. And there's a whole bunch of like concepts in between that like get you to like which ones should you care about.
Right. There's, let's say there's philosophy, things since this is the art of quality, there's what I think a quality business with a capital Q is.
Right.
But I can define all that stuff and put it in this robot, in this loop. And say, so here are the things that I believe matter. And now I want to understand that state change. What happened overnight in that universe of 50,000 where something got dramatically better? Or maybe it was already very good, but it got very affordable or whatever. Yeah.
And so loop design is essentially looking at the artifact that it produces, that an automation or a single goal has produced, and saying, I want you to produce an artifact that is shaped in the form of this 0 to 10 companies that I should care about or look at, that I read in the morning each morning. And I'm going to read the quality of that artifact, and I'm going to decide, how do I need to change the information that's in your context? Or how am I going to modify the goal itself, the 3 to 5 sentences? Or how am I going to change the quality of the automation, which is similar to, I think, the goal setting, because the automation has the same language, such that the artifact changes for the better. And each day, so the first part is to just create the first automation, and then the next step is to probably duplicate that automation to see if you end up with the same results, because they're state machines, so they don't actually know, you're going to get slightly different. We ran the same thing twice and we got slightly different answers. Then you're going to, pick the best of breed each day and say, oh, I want to continue with this one. Let's create 3 versions of that best of breed automation. And so you sort of like are trying to improve the loop and the design of the loop, which is essentially a design of the goal on a timer, such that you can do the things that are really hard, which is defining what you value. I mean, if you can spend all of your time figuring out what you value, and you have a machine that is continuously improving towards getting better and better or more efficient at getting you the things, surfacing the signal from the noise, I mean, isn't that the point of the job?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as you describe that, let's think about firms you've been involved in or firms I've been involved in. Like, what did they do? They went and they did a thing, generally served somebody or served a product, learned, and then said, okay, how do we make it better? And it was a loop. And a useful, for what it's worth, a useful analogy for me as I've tried to apply more of this thinking to a robot is, when I work with an analyst, it's kind of, particularly a junior analyst, it's, hey, junior analyst, I need you to do this thing, and here's an example of what good looks like.
Yep. Go.
And then they come back and they get some of it right. They miss a few things. You make some corrections, give it back to them, go again.
Yes.
For me, it was in some ways, this got a little bit easier when I thought, in a lot of ways, I'm learning to talk to the robot the same way that I've learned to have relationships with engineers over the years.
Yeah.
Or analysts.
The design of a goal, the design of the access to the context, the fast access to context that you might need at the moment of inference, which is just when you send inference, is just a fancy term for when the model tries to make sense of the stuff that you gave it, is a lot closer to mentorship than it is to engineering. And I think that everyone knows what it's like to bring up the next generation. After a certain age, you have examples of what it means to expose the next generation to things that they haven't seen. It's like, and that actually is the whole point of the apprenticeship. The whole point of the apprenticeship is essentially a series of permission statements. Like, you may do X. Have you tried Y? What would happen if? And it's like, if you're in an environment where people are willing to allow and encourage experimentation, trial and error, you learn so much, and you draft off of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is, I have this like deep belief that enthusiasm is an infinitely regenerating resource, meaning it's like hyperviral, very different than passion. So like, if you have passion, passion can be solo. You can have shared passion, but passion is often solo. Enthusiasm is almost by definition something that is contagious. And so it's like, you should always follow your enthusiasm, because enthusiasm is gravity for people. It just pulls people in, and it's highly generative. The more people that get pulled into enthusiasm, the more other additional people get pulled into being enthusiastic as well. And I think that's impossible to achieve when you're doing it over a Zoom.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's absolutely the case that what has gone on here, and in general enthusiasm, it's a really good way to put it, is, we're watching the World Cup now. It's just like, it's easy to observe. You watch fans, or you go watch the game with fans, and it is meaningfully different than, doesn't matter how good your TV is at home. It's just meaningfully different. And unsurprisingly, creation and creativity, they riff on that energy too, right? Yeah. One of the things that was in my brain as I was thinking about coming out here, and it goes right back to the idea of, generally when you talk about investing, I think people's minds often go to money and stocks and so on. But the broader definition of investing is, investing generally, you're allocating scarce resources to things that create returns. And when I think about, what are the scarcest resources in the world, generally they're time, energy, trust. Maybe we would put enthusiasm in there. I haven't thought that one through, but at a minimum, certainly time. Life is not that long. And so I think about, so where's potentially some of the greatest ROI in the world right now? And I do think it's partly in this domain of understanding, to use your phrase from earlier, understanding this kind of new species. What can it do? What can't it do? What ought we get it to do? What ought we not? How does that change how we get to be as humans? I agree with you that there's a lot of humanity that I think will come back out of us, because this machine metaphor that started a few hundred years ago for humans or cogs in machines and so on, is, this myth is getting exploded that we were just sort of bits of machines. And so the more that the machines can actually do the machine stuff, then we can do the human stuff. So before we move on to another topic, I want to mention, if others are interested in this apprenticeship with Andrew and Density, please reach out. We'll put the appropriate contact details in the show notes. And thank you for that offer. We've talked earlier before we hit record on how convicted we are that now is the time to move more around, go into different offices you haven't been in, go try things you haven't done, hang out with people that you haven't encountered. So anyway, thank you for that, that offer.
I do think I would say like a minimum of 3 days.
Yeah.
Because I would even say, I think at the end of 2 weeks, not that someone needs to come out for 2 weeks, but that's useful for an internal team. But like, there's just things, it's kind of like time with model. It's like the more time you spend in that environment, the more rapidly you adjust to the new reality of having these systems. And I think a very good measure of success is when you start to encounter the weird experience of, I forgot to start my model on a thing. When you feel that, it means that you've produced enough high quality work with your mentored model that you doing something else at the grocery store is useful time that's not being used by the model to do stuff while you're away. If you start to experience that, you're starting to feel, I would say it's higher likely that you have an intuition for what the model is capable of.
Meaning my model ought to be ticking on something all the time.
That's right.
And if you haven't figured out how to make that a reality, your intuition probably isn't there yet.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's okay that it's not working on a thing, but there's very little, it's kind of really frustrating when you feel the frustration.
Right.
It's more just like, I don't think should works very well, which is like, you should always have a model working. I don't know that I necessarily believe that. I think that it's very important to be thinking and considering and deciding. Like, you don't have to always be doing something, but the first time that you feel frustrated, that your computer isn't working on something on your behalf, is usually a good indication that you're at the edge.
Yeah.
You've started to encounter
that's really interesting. Yeah. We haven't talked about this yet, but I had a moment earlier today where to make a long story short, I needed to go make a call, but I hadn't quite finished queuing up what I wanted the computer to be running. And I was sort of viscerally frustrated.
Yeah.
I was going to get off that call and the artifact wasn't going to be ready.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Because the thing is that you could have come back to a little gift that you open up and sort of consider, as opposed to coming back to needing to start off the process again.
Yes. 100%.
Like, I have this deep belief that that's why everything is going to terminate at human ambition. So I think labor is a very important thing to do. in life. Like you should labor on stuff. But I don't think that that is necessarily the best way to measure the success or failure of like a species. I think that humans are going to do less labor, and instead they're going to do a lot more goal setting. And I mean this across the board. Why do you get into being a doctor? You don't get into being there are, sure, plenty of circumstances where you get into being a doctor because you enjoy surgery. But it's often the ambition to help people, to study a disease because you are hoping to cure it. You get into biology to understand how things work. You get into physics to answer fundamental questions about how the universe works and our place in it. Your labor is your method of getting closer to your ambition. And so when you have models that are capable of churning on the labor of doing stuff, and you can actually see this in mathematics right now, there are many Erdos problems that have been solved by frontier models.
Yes.
And if you listen to Terence Tao talk about this, he's doing more interesting math now than he's ever done before.
Yeah.
And he's the premier mathematician in the world. Like,
yes.
And it's because we are freeing the humans from the labors of that we didn't realize were not fundamental, didn't need to be fundamental to what it means to be a mathematician.
Yes.
And a great example of this is that like he gets to publish more often.
Yes.
And it's just a very basic thing of like writing the documents down. He's like, I can write way more down now.
Right.
Which means it frees up my time to think about harder and harder math problems, which is
so
the
true.
fundamentals of like human advancement. Like we are going to become more ourselves as a result of having to do less of the things that as machines chew through these things that we've wrapped up in our identity, but are actually less connected to who we are than we thought.
Yes. I agree. For anyone who hasn't heard Terence Tao talk about that, you kind of just have to. I mean, the guy's not unhappy. The guy is thrilled.
Thrilled.
Right? It's like,
over the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, can we talk about Go for a second? Like
yes,
AlphaGo?
we should. I think this was an early, and I have you to thank for pointing me at this, but I think it was an early indicator of what happens when computers get really good and then we encounter or re-encounter them. So please give us the...
Well, the documentary, I think, is on Netflix.
YouTube, because it was DeepMind.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay. AlphaGo, which is highly worth watching.
Phenomenal documentary for anybody. It's very approachable. You don't have to be into AI or into the game of Go or even chess to appreciate this. But if you've seen it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I'll just do like a quick recap. The game of Go is sort of infinitely more complex than the game of chess, just in terms of like the move set. It's also a very beautiful game between two players. And there's only two pieces, like white and black, and you sort of work to capture space on a board. And Go, computers could really never beat the best Go players until the team behind DeepMind at Google decided to start working on something called AlphaGo. And AlphaGo is essentially just like, it's the equivalent of, was it Deep Blue or something like that?
Yes, for chess. So
for chess.
The 90s and early 2000s, that was when chess engines were improving and eventually eclipsed humans.
Right.
And Go, as I understand it, there are more potential moves on a Go board than there are atoms in the universe.
Which is just like kind of impossible to fathom.
Yes, very much. But this is why it was a much harder class of problem, because you couldn't sort of just like brute force it and say, I'm going to simulate every possible move and pick the optimum one.
Yeah.
Because it's impossible. So a whole new approach was required, which was based on much more probabilistic reasoning rather than deterministic reasoning. And so that became the setup for keep going. But
well, so what was amazing about the sort of this, I think was in 2017, if I'm remembering correctly, but like the thing that was amazing about this was like the human won, the computer won, the human won, then the computer won, then the computer won. And ultimately, the magic moment was not that the computer ultimately beat Lee Sedol, who was the world's best Go player, which it did. But actually, this particular move called Move 37, where AlphaGo played a move in like the third game or the fourth game of 5 that was confounding. Like a human would never play, but also was not obvious why it was so critical. And everyone was stunned when it happened. Like when you watch the film, like it's a wonderful moment because you feel the humans reacting in a way that was like, what? And then it was later described as a moment of creativity, of like true creativity. Now, this is 2017, before the world of LLMs and ChatGPT didn't come around until 2023. A lot of time to evolve these models and everything. But the thing that was remarkable is that if you look at pre-Alpha Go players and their sort of proficiency and how good they are, and then you look at post-Alpha Go players, the delta is literally 100%. It's like some crazy percentage jump in like the quality. Literally, it made Go players better. And it's not just about this move. It was just that it even existed as a concept. So we get really doomerism, and there's a lot of headlines, but I think those headlines around artificial intelligence and jobs and all those other things I have some like cynical takes on the purveyors of some of those headlines.
Right.
Which I'll set aside for a second. I think a lot of it is the fear of the unknown. And when you spend time with these models, like time with model kind of solves that problem because you just start to realize how it applies to you. And it's really hard to know how it applies to you when you're just reading about it.
Right.
And so, and then when major model provider CEOs are saying it's going to take 10% of jobs or everybody's job's going away or it might kill us, it's just like, yeah, it's no surprise that people are afraid.
Yeah.
Maybe don't say those things and instead talk about the things that are extraordinary about it and then enable people. Like, that's the other thing is like, bring people along, you know, explain what's actually happening in these models.
Right. I mean, at a minimum, I think it's hard not to encounter these models and say, I can immediately be substantially better at my job starting tomorrow, my current job. And if you just trace that line of thought, at the end of the day, we're humans in service of each other. And so whoever you're serving in whatever capacity you are, if you have a capability to become immediately substantially better tomorrow with stuff that exists right now, which isn't a big leap, there will be bumps in the road, but that's really a pretty compelling thought. And compelling, I think, from lots of different angles, right? I don't think nobody's saying all of our businesses and enterprises and so on run perfectly and are without flaws. And so from this angle, there's enormous improvement to be made and the opportunity for things to get better faster than potentially than they ever have.
Yeah. I think the other thing that meaningfully contributes to this is people are mostly on the free or $20 plans. And this is a very practical point. But if you buy the $200 a month plan, even just buy 1 month of the $200 plan and then cancel it the next month. The delta between those models and what they're capable of, it's as if that is the have and have nots.
Yeah.
And I think that people have these preconceived notions or these outdated notions of what these models are capable of and what they're not.
Yes.
And it's like, yes, you're correct 6 months ago. Like, yes, you are correct. Hallucinations are a problem a year ago. But if you are working with the models at the actual frontier, which you only need $200 a month to achieve, I would argue that is democratization of intelligence. Like, you will experience a totally different realm of potential ability. And I say this having worked with a lot of people who are coming from those models, which we then, during the apprenticeship, we give them a $200 Claude plan and a $200 Codex plan. And then we explain and teach them and give them the tools on like how to build and use those effectively. And it's like they come out agog. Like, I had no idea. And the crazy thing is, this is the worst they will ever be.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And they're already extraordinary.
Yes.
And everyone I know who is at all interacting with the frontier of these tools is working harder than they've ever worked in their life. And they are joy-filled. Joy-filled at 11 o'clock at night, talking to their computer, like aloud. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing if you let it.
Right.
Like, if you let it be a wonderful thing, it will be a wonderful thing. And if you want it to be the doom of the human race, then it will get regulated left, right, and center, and we will all slow down.
Yeah. I was talking to somebody recently, and I said for all of human history, the cost to get a decent answer to a hard question was really high, right? Like you either had to do a lot of work or you had to go find the expert or experts. If you wanted to do anything that was multidisciplinary, you had to find multiple experts and convince them to hang out together. And so, for thousands of years of human history, we would think of a question and then we'd have to immediately think, what's the cost to get a decent answer to that question? And I'm still trying to learn ways to sort of rewire my brain to not say, almost without even thinking about it, oh, that's a hard question. Is it worth the effort? Because now you can get a decent answer to many complex questions almost for free.
Well, this is the crazy thing about this is that the distribution of human ambition will not change.
Right.
But the scale of human ambition is going to grow by 1,000x. And I'm not joking. I mean, actually 1,000x on present models. If you stop the models today.
Yeah, which is a great mental model too. For all our unknown about how much better do these get. And so I love that way of thinking of just look at what's here provably today. And even if nothing gets better, which likely will, just what can be done with that?
That's right.
And from there, I think that supports the 1,000x you're talking about.
Yeah, and the thing is, folks who are really motivated intrinsically to just like do stuff are going to do stuff, right? Folks that are like not terribly interested in doing a lot of stuff in their day-to-day are not going to do a ton of stuff. But the curve has shifted to the right. Everyone will have access. Everyone currently has access to doing 5, 10, 100x, 1,000x of what they used to be able to do. And I would argue that it is increasingly a skill issue. And meaning, how do you use the model? What context do you give to the model? And I think it's possible that like the 1,000x thing is simply not achievable because we're still discovering what the species is capable of. And there's all these other like limitations on stuff, whether it's, power or energy or just like the distribution of models into different industries. Like it's going to take time.
Right.
But the capability to, if you talk to the folks over at Google, have we talked about the protein AlphaFold, the thing that followed AlphaGo? Did we talk about this?
We have offline, but let's get into it here. It's very exciting. Yeah.
So in the 1980s, having a digital representation of a protein structure is very useful because you can then start to model like what happens if you modify that protein or what happens if you combine that protein with something else. Very useful for medicine. Protein structures are, if you've ever seen them, they're like ribbons and marbles. And they're sort of beautiful, but they're inscrutable. This isn't just like a DNA chain.
Right.
It's a complex structure.
Right.
So in the 1980s, they built a game called Fold It because humans, it turns out, are really good at playing video games and finding patterns. And you could modify the structure of a semi-known protein until it sort of like got close to what we would sort of expect it to be. I can't actually remember the mechanics of the actual game, but they built this video game and it was a wonderful mechanism of like distributed intelligence and knowledge gathering. And over the course of 30 years, 40 years, we mapped, I want to call it 180,000, we being humans, mapped 180,000 proteins. Google or DeepMind released something called AlphaFold, which was I don't think it was a predecessor. I think it was after AlphaGo. I can't remember where in the sequence. Maybe it was a predecessor. It was called AlphaFold, and it was a deep learning model to play the game of Fold It. We mapped we humans, they, DeepMind, over 4 years, I think, we mapped 200 million proteins correctly. The number of proteins on the planet Earth is 200 million. We mapped every protein known to man. And it's possible that we have pulled in medical science by 50 years. That's crazy. We're seeing all this crazy stuff around Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and all this stuff now. Like if you read the headlines or if you read some of like the journals, we have extraordinary results. There was a woman who had Alzheimer's who took low-dose psilocybin a very low dose of psilocybin, and for 2 weeks, fully regained the ability to speak. Like fully regained her memories of people that she was talking to, was able to independently get about her day. Now the effects sort of subsided, and I think that she is taking more psilocybin, but my point is we have like a much better understanding of how we can apply and improve. Right. And Eli Lilly is doing literally magic right now with heart disease and with insulin resistance. And I am convinced that these things are related. Yeah, I don't know how we got onto this, but like AlphaFold is like a great example of, I think, applied AI.
Yeah, I kind of think that the old Charlie Munger sort of inversion thing. So one way to look at what effect will AI have on the species is what positives can it contribute, of which I think there are many. One that's been a little easier for me to get my head around is just invert it and say, what stuff do we wish was better? We had 200,000 proteins mapped. We would like to all 200 million. Heart disease remains the largest killer of humans globally, 30+%.
That's right.
And so I don't think there's anyone around with heart disease who says, I wish we didn't have better therapies for it. And I can just go on and on and on and just think like, man, if you start looking at the world that way and say, what can we improve? What's broken or not as good as we wish it was? And then you kind of connect the dots with, and how can we spend our time now? And what can we amplify?
Yeah. Like we are not going to be sitting in a park painting while our models go and like meaningfully contribute to GDP. We could, but what's going to happen is like humans get like antsy. Humans, when like basic needs are met, they like start to tinker. We just can't help ourselves make tools and make things. And that's why I think all of this terminates at human ambition. Literally, we are ambition machines. And I think that we have always been ambition machines, but we've been far enough away because we had to do the labor to get to the ambition that you had to have absurdly motivated humans to do anything that was absurdly hard. But now you need like a modestly motivated human to do kind of an absurdly cool thing.
Right.
Which makes everything terminate at what do you want to achieve? It's all goal setting.
Right.
And that's like, I'm very excited for the human race. And I can't believe I'm alive during this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. What a time to be alive. So one way to think about what we've been talking about is that the cost to create is plummeting. And so I'm curious your thoughts as the cost to create approaches zero almost. How are you thinking about, okay, so what do I create? And I know that you're having sat with you this week, you're creating all kinds of stuff, but there again, you're still limited by the time you have and some token limited. So how have you been thinking through? So now that we can do anything, what do we do?
I actually think that question answers itself. I don't think that question requires an answer. I think it's like, as long as humans continue to live, a diverse set of humans continues to live on the earth, stuff is just going to happen because there shouldn't be top down, in my opinion. There are circumstances that deserve top down organization. But by the end of this century, we will land on the moon. There are moments that deserve universal collective. But what really is going to happen is just a bunch of people are just going to like get excited about the things that they want to work on. And they're going to find their tribe who's also super stoked about the things that they want to work on. And it'll just kind of naturally turn into work products. It'll turn into artifacts in all manner of human expression. So I'm less concerned about like, will we work on the right things?
Yeah.
And I actually think that is a feature of artificial intelligence, not necessarily it is how humans need this and this needs humans. So like machines don't want anything. They don't set goals. They're not like, I would like to achieve. If you find a machine with a goal at any point in the future, behind it is a human.
Yes. I think that's such an underappreciated point. Yeah. The machine doesn't know what to do until it is told what to do.
Yeah.
It can amplify to incredible amounts, but left alone, it either does nothing or goes in circles.
I think we were going to wander into very weird Asimov territory when I'm convinced that there will be a time where we're like, should they vote? You know, like computerhood being like a thing.
Right.
At least in some parts of the world. But I think that's going to that doesn't mean that the computer wants a thing that wasn't ultimately inspired by its designer, inspired by its architect, inspired by the person it serves, inspired by some community of people that it presumably serves.
Yeah.
And so there, even if we are experiencing something that feels like it has its own goals, there is somewhere before it that someone set off that chain of events.
Right.
We just happen to be in the moment right now where our hands are on the levers.
Right.
Do this automation.
Right.
Do this goal. Please achieve this thing. Answer this question. The levers are going to start to wander away from us as we pull fewer levers and the machine pulls more.
Right.
Until eventually we're not really, it's going to be a little eerie. There's going to be like, I would like to live a good life. And then it's like, well, what does the machine interpret from that?
Right.
And if the machine, and we're getting into some pretty esoteric territory, but like, this is going to happen. Like, you're going to turn to a robot of some kind, digital or otherwise, and you're going to say that you would like to achieve something, do something with your life. And the model is going to be really good at like creating a plan for you.
Yeah.
And then not only that, doing material work on your behalf. And I think financial work is actually a perfect example of this, very practical example of this. I would like my net worth to be X of some percentage of what it is today, 125% of what it is today over some time period. And then the models, as they get better, are going to apply all of the various tools that they have access to achieving that end. And I don't know what happens in that world. I just know that the more robots you fill in that world, all trying to achieve the same thing, the more chaos is going to get wrought, because now they're not just playing a game against the market of a bunch of humans buying and selling
It's
stuff.
a reflexive game. Yeah. Right.
So I don't know what happens next, but it's going to get weird. And frankly, weird is good.
Yeah.
Humans need weird. Like,
this sounds like emergence language. I mean, generally, if you study nature, weird and sometimes phenomenal things, they emerge. They come, and they often come in unexpected ways and from unexpected places. The water bear, I'm sure, whatever the backstory is, I'm sure it's not normal. But that is sort of the nature of complex systems and how they work. And success is iterative, and systems iterate and iterate and iterate, and you get these sometimes phenomenal outcomes as a result. Anything else that we haven't covered? I mean, I'm really enjoying this conversation, but anything else we want to make sure we get in here?
I think probably one of the outstanding questions that is not, I am a naturally optimistic person, as you can probably tell from my answers to some of these questions. But optimism, I don't think, is blind. I think optimism is actually a pretty practical thing. It's like, the world is filled with objects that exist today because of optimists before.
Right.
And so I think it's useful to be optimistic. What I don't know yet is I'm really curious, like, how to raise kids well.
Yeah.
In a world where it's so dramatically different. Yeah. I think having the context of a pre-internet era, having the context of the internet era and its progression, of the concept of a phone. I have a bunch of analog radios. My life is filled with barbells. And we have a lot, we got, turntables and analog radios that you turn on and all throughout the house. And one of my kids, who's under 5, set Alexa to the radio. Or not even Alexa, said, can we listen to this song?
Right.
And it's like, the experience of being a child is totally different with certain technologies, and especially this technology.
Right.
To experience voice chat on ChatGPT as a person, because your context, your personal context, only carries 3 years of 4 or 5 years of life.
Right.
I don't know what happens with the relationships between man and machine 20 years from that as your context. I know what it happens when 39 years of human context. So I'm learning that one as we go. I've got 3 kids, so I'm learning that as we go. But I also think it would be not appropriate to not create literacy with children in how to work with these models and how to use these things.
Yeah. I'll offer a very encouraging thing that happened to me this week. My experience using AI for the most part to date has been, and I mean over the preceding years, has been when you're using it, right? You're in front of it, you're prompting it. some of the things you and I have done over the last few days, and this was really at your steering, was if you defined a goal suitably well and it's suitably difficult and suitably well defined and so on, it actually ought to take the machine a while to accomplish.
Yeah.
And while the machine's accomplishing it, at some point you've got the machine running, maybe it's running on a couple of things, go do something else. And so I found myself both sort of in some ways working my laptop harder than it's ever worked in its life probably, and equally writing more on paper than I typically do.
It's great.
And that barbell and that sort of make the machine be the best of what it can be, and then go be the best of what you can be, something like that. And to your point, you know, if we don't teach our children to have fluency in this, that world is closed to them. But equally, there's at least a glimpse of a world where they learn to let the machines do the machine stuff and they do the human stuff. And part of that is by understanding the machines and knowing how to work with them and understanding that the machines will work and they can go do other things. They can go listen to the radio.
Yeah. The lessons of this are only really going to be obvious in retrospect.
Right.
I think the most useful analog to this is scribes and the printing press. There were about 50,000 scribes globally on the entire planet had the ability to read and write.
Yeah, and in a world where that would have been a meaningful amount of the population. You know, it was not like 50,000 out of 8 billion today.
That's
right?
true. That's true. But still, I think the primary point is it was so few people could read and write.
Right.
Even if it was, you know, call it 900,
even if it was
900 million people, or if it was, you know, it was 300 million people.
Right, but most couldn't.
But we're talking the vast majority of humanity couldn't read and write.
Right.
What's downstream of reading and writing? Everything.
Yes.
You know, like
knowledge.
Everything related to knowledge is downstream of reading and writing.
Right.
So you got 50,000 people that are considered wizards, and printing press comes out. The scribe function dies as a primary method of keeping track of information, writing down stories. And it's sad because we lose this incredible thing that created some of the most beautiful works of art that we've probably ever seen in these old tomes, you know. But what we bought on the other side was literally a population that could all read and write.
Right.
And what did they do? They went and now did mathematics. Right. And they went and they studied botany. And they went to the moon. And it's like, you can't know the consequences of the state change, of the creative destruction that's happening until, you know, it's in the rear view mirror.
Right.
This one I'm convinced is not different from any sort of like Luddite story of like major transition in technology. But I do think that along the way you lose people, and along the way there are people that can get sort of churned up and chewed up in like the process. And I think that's going to happen again. And I think our job during the transition, call it this decade of transitions, 5-year transition, 10-year transition, is to minimize the damage on the people that get on the functions and the expectations of people that don't make the leap into what it means to be, you know, using these models in this way.
Right.
Who don't have access to an apprenticeship program, who don't have access to a frontier model, who don't know what that even means or why it should matter.
Right.
But I also think that it is deeply cynical for any frontier company or any sort of industry technologist or industrialist or whatever to believe that there is not trapped creativity in every human.
Yeah.
We ought to like have the humility to believe that we can learn something from every human and that everybody has something to contribute, even if we believe in disequal contribution, even if we believe that it's just like the reality of human distribution on like people are some going to have really big ambition and others are going to have smaller ambitions. But that does not mean that you ignore people, you know? So I don't know where this lands, but I'm generally very hopeful. And I would hope that more people attempt to make the case for a hopeful future, because I think in doing so, we increase its likelihood.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thank you for sharing where you are and what you're learning. And thank you especially for inviting me into it. And it's been a very memorable week.
Oh, you're welcome.
For me.
You're great company.
We ask everyone the same closing question on the show, which is, What's the most memorable experience you've had with capital Q quality?
Quality of any kind?
Any kind. I say capital Q is, if we think of quality, this kind of way that Plato defined the good, like capital G, this thing that we may not ever fully achieve, but this thing we aspire to. So however you would define quality with a capital Q, what's been memorable?
I don't think that there is a better, I would struggle to describe a better human experience than being a father. Like, I don't know that it's possible to describe what it means to be a part of a family that deeply cares for one another and is laughing most of their life. And I would say your job is like to kind of like create an environment that produces joy more often than joy and curiosity, probably more than, whatever the alternatives might be. And it's not that like everything's rosy all the time, but that is also an unknowable thing before you're a parent.
Yes.
And you hear people talk about it. Everybody has lots of different experiences with being a parent, but there's like a great quote that's something like every happy family is the same and every unhappy family is unhappy in their own way. I think it's the opening of Anna Karenina. Something like that. I'm butchering the quote. But the point is, like, I think that it's very hard to know what it's like to be a parent.
Yep.
And if you're fortunate enough to get to be a parent and then fortunate enough to be in a position where you can spend quality time with your kids, man, they teach you more about the world in a day than you can, you could, learn in a month. And I also think that their like enthusiasm for you even existing as a human is just like, it's just a total gift.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It really is. It is just, someone who, when you're available to play, they're ready every time, right? It's incredible. That's a great answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you again for coming on and really enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, come back and do it again.
I will take you up on that. Yeah. Thank you for listening. For more resources, please visit our website, theartofquality.co.